It's just been going on, all throughout recorded human history. So the idea that people would continue, Muhammad's prophetic mission, quote unquote, extended over 22 years. The idea that you would continue to receive channeled messages for decades is nothing new. So that the Urantia people were able to reproduce it doesn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah, I mean, also, dude, here's what I suspect, not necessarily a Urantia book, but every single thing where you get the aliens give you a talking to, like, if you guys don't stop with your war, I didn't do that, motherfucker. Why are you saying we?
Right.
The leaders, apparently. Why don't you stick your finger in their ass and tell them that shit?
Right.
Why? So as soon as they turn it around on it's you, the people who are bad. I mean, by the way, what Trump is doing now, are you still loyal to MAGA? No, asshole. You said you were loyal to me.
Right.
Oh my God.
3, 2, 1, send it. Hey, two.
And you still lose. Yeah.
Staff tonight.
Oh, you're short-staffed?
Yeah, we really need someone to come in.
Damn, that's tough. Good luck, though.
We were hoping.
I keep seeing that people.
Put this out wrong. Get it back.
See what YouTube Shorts isn't that great. What kind of podcast we got going on here? Bombshell anti-gravity.
I know that something's going on. Whether it's advanced vehicles that we have designed or others have designed.
This newly resurfaced U.S. Air Force study from 1990 titled Electric Propulsion Study, it contains technical statements that directly contradict the mainstream institutional dismissal of one of the most controversial ideas in aerospace energy propulsion history, the Byfield-Brown effect.
It's entirely possible that they took that theory or theories like that and developed gadgets that could be anti-gravitation. And I suspect they have.
And what would those be?
You know, there are definitely times when you're doing this kind of work where you come across something that just forces you to slow down, sit back, and recognize that the narratives we're being given about scientific reality are just incomplete. This newly resurfaced U.S. Air Force study from 1990 titled Electric Propulsion Study, it contains technical statements that directly contradict the mainstream institutional dismissal of one of the most controversial ideas in aerospace energy propulsion history, the Byfield-Brown effect. For decades, this effect has been brushed off by academic physics as a misunderstanding. The public explanation has always been that if you see a high voltage asymmetric capacitor producing thrust, that it's actually just ion wind, meaning that the device is just pushing against the surrounding air like a highly inefficient electrostatic fan. Nothing exotic, nothing gravitational, just a quirky misinterpretation of basic physics. But the Air Force's internal study tells a very different story. It places the Byfield-Brown configuration at the top of its list of legitimate propulsion candidates, the kind that could genuinely reshape aerospace capabilities forever. So in order to really understand the significance of this, we need to step back and explain who Townsend Brown actually was. In the 1920s, Thomas Townsend Brown claimed to have discovered that high voltage capacitors could produce thrust in a direction that did not depend on ionized air, but instead seemed to be connected to gravity itself. Brown believed that electrical energy stored in asymmetric capacitor plates could interact with the gravitational field. The effect became known as the Byfield-Brown effect, after Brown and his mentor, Dr. Paul Byfield. Although Brown demonstrated these forces repeatedly, mainstream science insisted it was all explainable via ionized air currents, nothing more than gases being pushed around by electric fields. But here's the twist. The Air Force's 1990 study doesn't treat the effect as ion wind at all. Instead, it evaluates the underlying physics as a real, potentially gravitational phenomenon, deserving of serious military research. So that's the first crack in the facade. This document doesn't just validate Brown's curiosity, it endorses an entire class of phenomena that most of academia either ignores or outright denies. It proposes in a formal research context that electrical charge and mass may be interconvertible. Now, what that really means is that they are suggesting by rapidly modulating the energy stored in a capacitor, you can produce tiny but genuine fluctuations in mass. Mass, the thing that gives objects inertia and weight, could be dynamically manipulated by the timed application of electric fields. We're talking about reducing the mass, the weight of an object through these processes. This is the beginnings of what we would call in layman's terms anti-gravity. The study steps into even stranger territory, describing how certain five-dimensional extensions of general relativity predict conditions under which momentum conservation may be violated. Now, for most people, momentum conservation is just an abstract rule, but in engineering terms, it means something very simple. Rockets require fuel to push mass out of the back in order to go forward. Yeah. If momentum conservation is broken or bypassed, you can generate thrust without expelling anything. This is what's known as reactionless propulsion. It's the physical principle that if real would allow the creation of craft capable of extreme acceleration without any visible exhaust. The exact behavior reported in countless UFO encounters over the decades. The Air Force authors address the energy domain, according to their analysis under the right unified field interactions, power densities 10 billion times greater than nuclear reactions become possible and accessible. For context, nuclear energy already dwarfs chemical reactions by orders of magnitude. An energy regime that is 10 billion times above nuclear would rewrite civilization overnight. The fact that this claim appears in a military technical study quietly, without sensationalism, indicates that the scientists are working within a theoretical landscape that is far more expansive than anything allowed in mainstream physics education. Then comes an even stranger revelation, the idea that gravitational components of electromagnetic waves could be amplified at certain frequencies. Now, most people think of radio waves, microwaves, and light as purely electromagnetic, but in these unified theories, those waves can carry both electromagnetic and gravitational modes. And under some conditions, the gravitational component can grow stronger at the expense of the electric one. This is essentially the idea that gravity itself can be engineered by tuning
This is
electromagnetic
fucking
systems.
boring. I
If
hate
you
to
can
say it.
amplify the gravitational portion of an electromagnetic wave, you can potentially generate curvature in space-time, which is a foundational requirement for gravitational propulsion. But it gets even more unusual. The report states that electromagnetic energy could pass through a superconducting box, an object that should block all electromagnetic signals perfectly, like a Faraday cage, if that energy shifts into one of these mixed gravitational modes. Now, a superconducting Faraday cage is normally impenetrable to radio waves, to microwaves, anything electromagnetic. If energy can still leak out, that implies a mode of propagation that is neither classical electromagnetism nor classical gravity, but something in between, a unified field wave capable of bypassing electromagnetic shielding entirely. Now, to be studied in the deep black environment of special access programs.
I know that something's going on, whether it's advanced vehicles that we have designed or others have designed, or extra dimensional devices. I don't know. I know from experience that Los Alamos was used to fly experimental aircraft overhead and try to sense what they could sense from that. It's possible that whatever we saw in our hot tub that night was an advanced craft of some sort. It's also possible that it was an interdimensional creature or an interdimensional device. I don't know.
It had a very weird appearance to it, this one specifically, didn't it?
It did. It was the shape of, I've been saying, a stingray, a ray that you would see in the ocean, not the car. It had a raised, it's not really a fuselage, just an indistinct raised spine down the middle, and it had glowing circular orbs around the other side. It appeared that, because it went directly over our head, it appeared we were looking through some kind of field because it was shimmering somewhat. I suspect, and Willie and I both suspected this before he passed on, that the government had taken his theory and produced some devices out of that, because that theory, that 5-dimensional physics theory, and the expanded Maxwell equations say that there is a connection, there is a coupling between electromagnetism and gravitation. And now it's got to be weak, or it's got to be unique in some way, because we'd be levitating people off the floor with our electronic devices. So we know that's not it. We also know that, by the way, the potential for lasers existed in those original Maxwell equations in the 1850s, and they weren't developed until the 1960s because people didn't see that. They couldn't make that connection.
Oh yeah, I forgot I was streaming, not recording.
Well, that may be what we're seeing with those equations. We're just not clever enough yet, or at least I'm not, to see how you would go about producing an anti-gravitic device from those equations. 5-dimensional mathematics is not child's play.
Yeah,
it's very, very difficult.
I can barely even handle fractions, so I'm out of my depth.
It's difficult, and Willie was expert at it, of course, and he developed his theory. But it's entirely possible that they took that theory or theories like that and developed gadgets that could be anti-gravitation. And I suspect they have.
This paper also contains an almost throwaway reference to proton structure possibly differing radically from standard model predictions. Now, that might sound really abstract, But it actually signals something quite profound, because if protons aren't as stable or as rigidly defined as we think, then essentially the entire energy landscape of matter is more flexible than modern physics acknowledges. This is the part of the same theoretical framework that underpins the propulsion research in the study. In other words, the authors weren't just tweaking established physics, they were working with an extended model of reality where energy, mass, gravity, and electromagnetism form a single interconnected system. The study concludes by arguing that the real breakthroughs in propulsion are likely to come from electromagnetic gravitational coupling, not nuclear physics. And this would mean that a century of aerospace engineering, from jet turbines to rockets to fusion concepts, it's all been aimed at the wrong target. The Air Force researchers believe that exotic propulsion would emerge not from ever more powerful combustion or fission processes, but from the ability to manipulate fields of energy themselves. And this is where everything converges, because this document treats the Byfield-Brown effect, the same effect publicly dismissed for decades as simply ion wind, as a legitimate gravitational phenomenon worthy of high-priority research. That's the most explosive part of this. It means that the US Air Force was not only aware of Brown's claims, but viewed them as credible enough to serve as a foundation for gravitational propulsion concepts. So when you absorb the full magnitude of the document, all of these various elements, these concepts were taken seriously in the late 1980s and early 1990s. And if classified laboratories were already working on the enabling of these technologies, then the logical question becomes, well, what was built in secret during the decades that followed? The combination of theoretical breakthroughs, classified capacitor research, and sustained military interest tells us that development did not stop at the level of paper studies. It becomes intellectually compelling, almost, I would say, unavoidable, to conclude that advanced field propulsion systems were likely prototyped and refined within classified aerospace programs between the 1960s and the 1990s. Systems that were capable of tremendous acceleration without ejecting any propellant, systems with no visible control surfaces that can instantaneously change direction, operate silently, and defy classical aerodynamics. These would not look or behave like any aircraft we recognize. They would appear as luminous, they would be maneuvering in strange ways, gravity-defying objects with no wings, no exhaust, and no sonic boom. Where have we heard that before? In other words, to the average observer, they would look exactly like a UFO. But this is a human technology, and this is what worries me about the state of the current narrative that's being put out through this whole UFO disclosure movement in the American government, in the US and Congress and the Senate, and through all of these intelligence officials that are coming out on the record, is that we, I believe, are trying to push people further away from discovering actionable, operable technologies that reflect the same capacities that we deem to be a UFO. I think that there is a lot flying in us, guys, that we believe to be alien, that we believe to be non-human, that we are being encouraged to believe is non-human, when in reality, it's Lockheed Martin, it's Boeing, it's the Phantom Works, it's the Skunk Works, and it's entirely human-made.
And that's me.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're continuing our interview with Dr. Beatriz Villarreal, and Souls in Stanford's Gary Nolan is with us to really, at this point now, to have a discussion about the significance of this, not just the results, but this kind of project for science. Both of you undertake research that, to most scientists is extremely controversial because it concerns UAP, or at least the possibility of artifacts not made by human beings. Gary does that in the context of material science currently, and Beatriz, we've been discussing your work. So I have a question for both of you, which, as a non-scientist, as a social scientist or humanist, is raised for me every time I think about your work, both of your work, is, how does this get you, this kind of research get you to the heart of what science is? Because we forget that at the times before paradigm shifts and breakthroughs, people think scientists are absolutely crazy for pursuing new hypotheses, new ideas, heretical innovations.
Go ahead, Beatrice, if you'd like first.
Well, I'm just a very curious person. I just want to have answers to the things that I'm wondering about. So I guess there's something, well, what can we call it? A little bit of a hedonist approach I have in science, that I just do what is fun. I enjoy exploring certain ideas, certain directions. I move where my curiosity goes, and it led me in this direction. It led me into trying to understand whether there are UFOs and what they are, if they are physical objects like flying saucers or not. And that's all I can say for my own sake. It's just a discovery and exploration in data for me.
So I take it from a couple of different angles. First, kind of the before and after. The before is, when I published the Council Bluffs paper, which I think is frankly a minor paper in terms of whatever it is that we attempted to conclude, and how careful we were in the language, as opposed to the kind of biology language that I write about in my cancer biology and immunology papers, where even though I'm just as careful in what I say, I'm more confident in putting forward ideas because I know that they're going to be accepted by the community much more readily. And so I think we're further than we were 4 years ago when I published the other paper, but still not in this confidence realm where we can put forward speculation that won't be immediately attacked. There's skeptical attack versus, just outright, malevolent attack. But I think, again, the good thing about how science is done, and I push this idea constantly, don't put a conclusion or even the data out there until you've at the very least filtered it, or make sure that you found all of the negative inputs or problems that could be there, because you don't want Twitter to find the obvious problem for you. And so I again applaud what Beatrice did, and that even though she's only been talking about the transients, I think over the last year off and on, I had no sense of the amount of effort that had gone on behind the scenes already to produce the papers up to the level of where they are. And so that speaks to how science is supposed to be done. And I'm sorry to say, it's not how the Nazca mummies should have been done. It's not how the Buga sphere has been done. And so I just hope that early scientists coming along, or starting, even amateur scientists, I don't mean that in a negative sense, realize that there is value to being careful and not running to the internet the moment you think you have something. And that science, while it's not sacred in its rules, it's a process by which so much accomplishment has been done by humanity that it is worth making sure when we're coming to a problem like UAP that we apply the same stricture to it. And I know I'm speaking to the converted in many ways, but there's a lot of people who don't appreciate that yet and are constantly asking me on various threads or in venues, you know, why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? Well, maybe I am doing it, but I'm just not ready to tell you yet. And so, you know, follow the leaders in how they're doing it. Because we've lived in worlds where that's the norm. And, you know, we hope that the next cadre of leaders is going to come through, having seen that we actually didn't get blown out of the water the moment we stuck our toe in it.
Yeah, I must say I always had a problem with that. Some people think that there are questions like the UFO questions that basically can't be tested. That they believe that no, this is so much, you know, it's so complicated, and they form almost ideas or that cannot be tested through hypothesis. And I'm thinking that if there is such an effect, such a big effect that so many people see, that you have mass sightings, this should be testable. And I believe in the scientific method. You form the hypothesis, you put forward your test, and you go and carry it out, and then you analyze the data and see what's the outcome. There's of course going to be a lot of trial and error, and you might have to refine the hypothesis, you might try to try another one, but still I think everything can be tested. And I just don't submit to the idea of that the UFO question is so complicated that you can't try to test it out with science.
So I have a question for you, Beatrice. Can these experiments be done today, given all the...
Oh my God, yes, that's the trouble. That's a serious trouble how to do it today. And I wrote another paper about how we can do it today, where we apply the Earth's shadow to filter away all the satellites and all the space debris. Because
but do we have to blow up a nuclear bomb to do it?
Well, I would prefer not to have to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, how can we check it? Maybe we need to search for these objects at 80,000 kilometers height. Maybe we need to go at big altitudes. Maybe Avi and the Galileo Project can all give us ideas of how to do this much further out.
How about regional conflicts that are sub-nuclear? Because there's so much in the literary history of stuff showing up over the battlefields of Alexander the Great or Chinese warlords, etc. You know, are some other transients waiting to be correlated to troop movements?
Well, there is this group from Ukraine, from Kiev Observatory, and they had seen UAPs of two different sorts. I forgot what they call them. I forgot the names.
I remember
close to the war zone, and of course we were wondering, like, are they watching some secret weapons, or are they watching actual UAPs? It's super difficult because, again, it's the same trouble when very often when you do science, you have degeneracy between two different interpretations, and you need to try to find a way of knowing which is it that is the most
There's a
important
great documentary that I won't go into great length on called Chimp Empire, where anthropologists had settled themselves amongst these chimpanzees in a forest for 40 years. So that they essentially became invisible. But they were able then to watch the conflicts and film the conflicts amongst the chimpanzees in real time, because the chimpanzees just ignored them. So maybe we're the chimpanzees. And we've been so attuned to the ignoring these things in our environment that we don't see them when they're actually there to watch what they consider to be an interesting human event. Now, I'm speculating, but you know, Daily Mail will say tomorrow something different.
What else we got
Have
here?
either of you considered the possibility?
Is Graham Hancock
For New
Right.
Have either of you considered the possibility of civilization? Have either of you considered the possibility of civilizations being much older than what the available evidence suggests? If the hypotheses put forth by people like Graham Hancock are true, and we have had one or more advanced civilizations wiped out either by solar flares or comets or meteors or all of them around 11,000 years ago, where does that leave us? At least in the last 20 years, we've forgotten the universe outside our phones, and it may spell our doom like it probably has done before.
Yeah, lots of thinking. I think your framing is maybe a little off. It's not that civilizations are older, it's that there's a reset that takes relatively advanced civilizations and wipes them out. And this has...
Well, I mean, I read that as there have been advanced civilizations far older than anthropologists, mainstream anthropologists.
Yep, I would say that's fair. I think this is probably, it's strange to say it, but I think it's more likely than not. I think the work on the disaster cycle, 6 and 12,000 years, is robust enough that it raises the question about, do we really think that farming, for example, started since the last reset, or was there farming?
Would have been 2 ago by the periodicity you just mentioned.
Yeah, 12,000 year. Yeah. But it also raises the possibility that the reset isn't complete, because of course any information that persists through one of these resets causes the
this is very
bootstrapping
dry
to be that much faster.
I've never watched this
I think
podcast.
It would be unreasonable to expect that the reset was complete. Why are we so special this time? If there have been regular resets, why did this time we get to a place that, frankly, the evidence of which could not be disappeared by no matter what disaster cycle it was, no matter how global, the evidence of what we have done at this point could not be so fully disappeared. Humans persisted. We know that humans have persisted through, what would it be, hundreds of these disaster cycles. And so some humans persist, and with them some knowledge of what, of human culture persists through each of those bottlenecks.
I mean, I agree that that's likely.
Mainstream figures like Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson push impact theory that meteors are the cause for the end of civilizations, but they never mention the geomagnetic excursion that we are living through, and which there is evidence is cyclic and reliable, imprecise, but seems like seems to have a lot of support for it.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into a battle between these various camps, but I think the evidence for a geomagnetic excursion is, well, the excursion is clear. The extrapolation to what it will do, meaning
that the magnetic pole is moving around relative to the
axis of rotation,
to the point of the pole out of which comes the axis of rotation. Like there's a different word for the North Pole, which is where the axis of rotation comes out, and I can't think of what it is.
Well, there's magnetic north and there's geographic north.
So geographic is a word that I could use there.
Yeah,
but the excursion just refers to the magnetic pole moving around potentially quite a lot. And this is different from, but related to, the idea of pole shifts, pole flips.
Yes, I mean, in fact, that's the question. Is absent the excursion being the lead.
This is getting
Everyone,
weird.
geophysicist.
Alright, what's getting weird?
Everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. The mystery of interstellar object 3I Atlas is deepening day by day, though we are starting to come to some better understandings of what this interesting interstellar object actually is. Some big updates for you today. I'm going to be going through a complete breakdown as to everything that we know on 3I Atlas. Now, it has its closest approach to Earth rapidly approaching. That will be December 19th. So as I record this today, December 3rd, that is just about 2 weeks away. And that's coming after its perihelion, its closest approach to the sun, which was on October 29th. And that's when it's receiving the most solar radiation possible. Also was hit by a ton of solar storms just before that perihelion. So it had a lot of energy that was put into it. And we've been tracking interstellar objects since July 1st when we first picked it up. Then we looked at some earlier sky catalogs and picked it up there. And so we've been tracking its evolution as it's gone closer and closer to the sun. In deep interstellar space, it's receiving very little energy, though it is having galactic cosmic rays hit it. But the overall radiance, like the energy of radiance, is expected to be about 10 to the -7, 10 to the -8. When it's as closest to the sun, it's calculated to be 735 watts per square meter. Huge difference. So you would expect that there would be some pretty significant changes that would happen with 3I Atlas as it goes from deep interstellar space for an unknown duration of time it's spent there to close proximity to our star. And that's the first time in at least 10 million years that's been close to a star based off of our understanding of its orbit and its trajectory and looking at our all-sky Gaia catalog and seeing that basically it didn't pass within any nearby stars for the past 500 parsecs, and that equates to 10 million years. So as we've been tracking it through the solar system, all these anomalies have popped up. The most significant one now, I would say, is the sunward facing tail. And as the rest of 3I Atlas is now dimming post-perihelion, it's losing brightness. Its main anti-sunward tail is not as long, it's starting to dim in brightness. The sunward facing tail, which is quite anomalous already, is getting bigger and brighter. So that's quite weird. But when we first picked it up, we got a lot of spectroscopic measurements of it, which tells us the molecular and elemental breakdown. And then as it got closer and closer, we started noticing unusual changes. Specifically at 2.5 astronomical units, all of a sudden it rapidly brightened by 2 in apparent magnitude, which was quite significant. You typically don't see that from comets, and if you do, it's a cometary outburst which then subsides again. This was a complete increase in brightness, which then did not subside. In fact, it accelerated going into perihelion, showing some sort of change with 3I Atlas. And well, there is quite a bit of evidence that in fact, what occurred was that the entire object, comet, whatever you want to call it, had a burst of cryovolcanism across its entire surface. And what I find so interesting about this is that all of our information that we've gathered on 3I Atlas, in addition to a lot of information that we gathered on other celestial objects like trans-Newtonian objects, the different asteroids in the asteroid belt, centaurs, and more, they've helped us to kind of understand what 3I Atlas is and how it's evolving and the unique properties of 3I Atlas. Because at that transition of 2.5 astronomical units, where it brightened dramatically, that's indicative of there being catalytic processes that were active, allowing for this rapid brightening, the cryovolcanism, right? This sublimation of ice straight to water and water vapor. And when you have that, you actually develop magnetite crystals. So these are magnetic minerals. And as a result of that, 3I Atlas has actually been building its own inherent magnetism and its magnetic field in addition to its induced plasma magnetic field as it's traveled in our solar system. Additionally, we just got new information from the OSIRIS-REx mission, which basically was an impact on asteroid Bennu, and we gathered samples and brought them back to Earth. This is a B-type asteroid, and now we have found all the main building blocks of life from that asteroid. There is glucose, you have all the nucleotides, amino acids, even like briny mixtures and water. All that's been found on asteroid Bennu. That news just dropped. And, well, asteroid Bennu is quite similar to 3I Atlas. In fact, these compounds that you find on B-type asteroids are much more enriched in D-type asteroids, which are similar in their spectral characteristics to 3I Atlas. And also, there are carbonaceous chondrites. These are CR carbonaceous chondrites, a very specific type, which seem to really be similar in their characteristics to 3I Atlas and how they first formed basically outside the protoplanetary disk, remaining effectively like an untouched specimen of the early formation of the solar system. They have very similar characteristics to 3I Atlas, and they're very rare, these CR chondrites. And well, they're also super enriched in organics. So as 3I Atlas has gone closer to the sun, it has built this magnetism inherently from the production of magnetite through these catalytic processes. And there's evidence that, of course, 3I Atlas has a lot of nickel and iron. And while these CR chondrites also have a higher nickel-iron ratio, and that provides a catalytic substrate for these sort of reactions, which then produce organic compounds. So we have 3I Atlas hurtling through the solar system containing probably, we can't say for certain without in situ measurements, but based off of everything surrounding it that we know, almost certainly containing all the ingredients necessary for life as we know it. And it will be passing close to the Earth on the 19th of December. And then we will be going through the zone of space where it was during its perihelion, its closest approach to the sun, next May and April. So very interesting things happening with 3I Atlas. The cryovolcanism is really apparent with those huge jets which were bursting out of it post-perihelion, going out to 50,000 kilometers. Now it's cooling down.
So we'll know more in May, apparently. Okay, okie dokie. Let's find another small, little short video. Alright, News Nation.
The jury is still out on just how fast and how far the bombshell Age of Disclosure documentary moves the needle on UFO disclosure. But according to a new report, we may be closer than you think. Journalist Michael Schellenberger published an article today quoting a senior advisor to Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, who says, quote, "We are headed toward a massive disclosure." Now, just when that might happen, it remains vague, but it does reflect the sentiment of the moment. After several congressional hearings on Capitol Hill and whistleblowers like David Grush speaking out publicly on this show for the first time, it does feel as though we're closer than ever to our government acknowledging allegations that it has some sort of secret program trying to reverse engineer alien spacecraft. That allegation was examined thoroughly in the 1 hour, 50-minute documentary. Rubio was by far the most senior official who went on the record, on camera, demanding answers. And the documentary wasn't the first time that he's voiced his concern about this. He spoke to News Nation in 2023 and said individuals with high clearances to work on this top secret program are too afraid to speak out because they fear retribution.
Some of these people still work in the government, and frankly, a lot of them are very fearful of their jobs, fearful of their clearances, fearful of their career, and some, frankly, are fearful of harm coming to them.
It is not just government employees who are in the know. Rubio believes the U.S. government has handed over these UFOs, these spacecraft that they have found, to private military contractors. He says those contractors know more about these crafts than the U.S. government. National security risk? Sure sounds like it could be. Joining us now is
That's
Michael
him.
Schellenberger, journalist and founder of Public News. Welcome back to the show, Michael. Always great to have you on. So no less than the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, went on camera in this documentary saying publicly that the U.S. government has recovered alien technology from non-human sources and is currently working to reverse engineer it. That's pretty incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be with you, Elizabeth. It's already a historic moment. I mean, we've never had anybody at Rubio's level. And keep in mind, Rubio is also the National Security Advisor. The last time you had the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor as the same person was Henry Kissinger between 1973 and 1975. Rubio is, arguably number 3, although the State Department is number 1 in foreign policy after the president. Elizabeth, I think what this all means is that the president needs to address this issue. He needs to speak directly to the American people and explain what's going on here. There is conflicting messages. The Department of War has the same line that they've had for years, which is very specific, and they say there's no evidence of extraterrestrials. I asked why they used that word because it wasn't a word I used, and they said, well, they referred me to their report. But look at what you have on the other side. You have not just, you have the president himself, the vice president, the director of national intelligence, the Secretary of State going further than any of them, and agreeing to even participate in this movie.
Yeah.
Is itself a major statement. So I think, look, there's conflicting messages. The president, I think, needs finally to address this issue.
It does feel like we've been building to this, these congressional hearings, these members of Congress. For the longest time, Michael, it was like people with tinfoil hats were talking about UFOs, and they were dismissed as Looney Tunes. And slowly but surely, people still make fun of it. But, there have been very serious congressional hearings with very serious whistleblowers testifying under oath. It does feel like we're getting to a moment, because especially in this documentary, it says it's not just the United States reverse engineering these spacecraft that we have found. Russia and China have also found craft and are also reverse engineering. This is a secret arms race happening.
Yeah, I mean, look, Elizabeth, people sometimes ask me, they go, what do you believe is happening? What do you, Michael Schellenberger, think is happening? Who cares? I mean, I really don't have secret clearance. I don't have any confidential access to information. You should care what the Secretary of State says.
Right.
The director of the CIA, the director of national intelligence, the vice president. They're all saying that this is not just ridiculous and something that shouldn't be taken seriously, but you've still got the Department of War that's sort of dismissing it. I just think the way that this has progressed is that we're at a place now where it's like, look, Elizabeth, I can't do many more hours of podcasts, speculating about this issue when we know that the people that run the government now have the power to tell us what it is. And like I said in my piece, if it's all a delusion and it's all, a kind of circular reporting based on disinformation from the 50s and 60s, then the president should reveal that. But either way, you have very conflicting messages coming from the highest levels of our government. I think they need to figure out a way to deconflict that.
We know, at least there are allegations in this documentary, Age of Disclosure, that in the first Trump administration, they seriously considered potentially going public with information like this, that George W. Bush also had 10 days of meetings where cabinet members discussed the implications of going public with the information. It's been going on that long, and they ultimately decided it was too cataclysmic for the world to handle. I think, to your point, I think we've reached a point where you can't keep the lid on this pot much longer if there's something in there. You know what I mean? Like, it's time to come clean one way or the other. And it's hard to imagine at this point that there are concerns about people losing their minds about existential questions and religion and beliefs, by revealing something, if there's something's really going on.
Yeah, look, I think they have to find a way to explain at least a large percentage of it, I think everybody in the country, almost everybody in the country, would understand if there's certain information by the way it was collected or related to weapons programs that we would expect and want our government to keep secret. But if it's a government, by and for the people, and our Constitution is in effect, then we need to know what's going on here. And the amount of everybody agrees there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation. There's not agreement on which is which. It ultimately, it's arrived at this moment that it's just got to be up to the president of the United States to finally address this issue. I think he will be asked about it in the days and weeks to come. And I think I think we saw in the Epstein files, people are not going to let go of this. They really want answers, because I think at a certain point, the speculation is boring when we know that our leaders actually do know what's going on and have not yet shared that information with us.
And when you had the Secretary of State confirming that there's something going on, or at least saying that there's something going on. Yeah. All right. Michael Shellenberger, great to talk to you as always. Thank you.
Great.
Now, Nicole Shanahan, I'll just say it. I think she's legit. I think she's fucking legit. Nicole Shanahan, I'll just say it. I think she's legit. I think she's fucking legit.
Conspiracy theories are entering a
Information is the oxygen of a democracy.
There's so much evidence out there that even if less than 1% is true, that would be enough to collapse the current paradigm and change the whole planet.
I met her in person, twice.
I'm not really sure what big secret
I met her
to be
husband.
honest with you.
More importantly, Jacob, who's super cool. He works on the Bitcoin Lightning Network, I think, or he did at one point. Super libertarian in thought, very cool. And people had this conspiracy theory because she was Jewish and married to Sergey Brin originally.
I think.
But when you actually get to know her story and learn the backstory of that, she actually gets even more based. And as a mom of a vax injured kid, she's fucking over it. And if you won't, but when you get the chance to talk to her about Sergey and what happened there behind the scenes, even more based. And she knows some shit. She knows some shit, and she's a fighter. So you're welcome to have your own conspiracy theories. Personally, I never trust anyone 100%. I'm always watching what people are putting out and judging accordingly with each piece of content.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a whistleblow for sure.
But what happened around the pandemic is that this whole...
What does based mean in the chat? Someone asked. Based, think of it like this. I've actually answered this to a lot of friends and family lately. Based is just slang for in base reality, outside of the matrix, unplugged from the matrix. You've taken the red pill, so to speak. You are no longer in the propaganda world built on the lies of fake history and fake science and fake media and fake news and fake fucking movies and all this shit. You've woken up to what everything is, what's really going on. And it's this infinite process. You're never going to know everything, but you know that you're being lied to. And it's not just lefts and rights, and it's not just Dems and reps. It's not just fucking blacks and whites. It's all of it. It's all psyops all the way down. Turtles all the way down. Based means unplugged from the matrix.
Other segment. What I don't think many of the tech mafia wives realize is that they were used to set the groundwork for what was called the reset. What is called generally as the reset by the Klaus Schwabs.
The Great Reset.
The Great Reset. Yeah. They openly talk about this Great Reset.
Yeah.
And she knows because she hung out with them, because she married Sergey Brin for a little while. And then she took a bunch of his money, which in this case, I'm fucking all for. And now she's using that money to fucking fight back.
Good.
So the tech wife mafias, I believe, were kind of being conscripted in many ways, and their money especially was being conscripted in to set the groundwork for the Great Reset.
Yeah. Specifically through
Good interview technique right there. Not saying too much, just prompting the next piece, just adding a little drop to get Nicole to keep talking.
A network of NGO advisors, relationship with Hollywood, relationship with Davos, and their own companies. So if you look at like who's on these boards, who hangs out with each other, how the culture of tech wealth works, like Silicon Valley tech wealth, and that small group of people responsible for a huge amount of money and a huge amount of NGO activity across the United States. It's a really small group of people, and it's a really small group of people making these decisions.
Personally, I think there's a schism in the Illuminati class, so to speak. I think there's a left and a right to the Illuminati class. A lot of the higher up ones are chosen people on both sides. And the Klaus Schwabs of this world align with this leftist NATO kind of, a lot of them are tech in Silicon Valley. A lot of them are in Hollywood. This is the George Soros side of things. The leftist Jews working the immigration in through the South. All of these networks of NGOs bringing people up through Central and South America. But then I think there's also the right-wing side of it, the Bibi Netanyahu factions, the more direct Zionist mafia, the military-industrial complex in a lot of ways. I think there's a bit of a schism there. But ultimately, it's two wings of the same bird of evil Illuminati fucking control on the top. But they're vying for control, and they are in this wrestling match, and we're all collateral damage. And they all fucking don't care about us. And I suspect, just on face value here, I suspect that she's more referring to the left-wing side of this thing, from where she comes from and from who she knew and what she is.
Yeah. And then
And the tactics she's about to
completely blind to everything else that's going on and how
Two cheeks of
their
the same
groundwork is being used to then enable.
Ralph Barrick, I strongly do not think that she's in it. I very strongly don't think that. The more you learn about her personal story and her child that was irrevocably injured by the COVID vax, she's awake as fuck. And she's fighting back in a big way. And the
Please
moment
listen to
she
the
smelled
interview.
the rat in the MAGA coalition that she helped to form, the moment that she realized what was really going on, she checked the fuck out and got out of there. That's a big deal, right? Because we all see that now. We all see. It took me longer than it took Nicole to see. I was on that train longer than her. I mean, I was starting to see the smoke, but she smelled the smoke way before I did, got the fuck out of there, and went and thought for herself for a long time of like, okay, so what do I do about it now that I've realized that the political parties are both captured? It's all controlled. It's turtles all the way down.
These other policies, these great
Yeah, she was the
reset
funding behind RFK that got RFK as far as
Now,
he got.
what this group of women doesn't realize is that in their haste, these women are all very busy.
Yeah.
They have multiple properties. They have tons of staff. They have staff issues, chronic staff issues. Their kids are busy. Their kids oftentimes have some health issues as well. A lot of them have relationship issues with their husbands. And a lot of them themselves are like medicated on SSRIs and antidepressants and all of that because it's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, so it's chaos, and these women find their meaning through their philanthropic work.
Yeah.
Did you see where this is going? To summarize, she's saying that the tech wives of these billionaires, of these technocratic billionaires, that she once was one, and she met them all and was involved in all that. She's noting that when you get to know that crowd, you realize that these tech wives are being conscripted into a scheme, a plot, maybe even an operation, so to speak, that they are not really aware of what they're being used to do, where they are doing philanthropic work with all of their tech
So I
money
guess
and their husband's
he
money and
listens to
their,
the
their family
interviews
money to pour it into these
breaks it
leftist causes that
down
are actually part of the op, part
as
of
the
the
interview's
big
going.
picture globalist op. without even realizing it, thinking that they're helping
see
the
why it's
world,
popular,
thinking that they're
yeah.
being generous. But it's very easy to pull the wool over their eyes because they are busy, medicated, mostly naive, out of touch tech wives. And they're getting used.
So
and she's speaking to them. She's not really speaking to us right now.
He's
She's sharing with
what
us, but she's
she's
speaking to
saying,
them.
I
And I think she's probably hoping that they're
don't
going to see
fucking
this.
know anymore.
Shout out
And
to
they
Damianti.
find
Thanks for the sub.
themselves. Like I would find myself. That was my self-worth, was my philanthropic work, and I really believed in it. I really believed that I was giving Black communities a chance to,
And she comes from the left.
like, rise
obviously.
up out of oppression. I really believed that I was helping Indigenous
And I would say
communities
mansplaining
rise
is
up
the
out of
only word I can think
oppression.
of.
And now that I look back and see how all those grants were forming, you know, because my version of success is those communities are actually uplifted.
Yeah. Not just more money pumped into them.
Not just more money. No, the
Sorry.
problems of the community have gotten worse. Crime in the community has gotten worse. Mental health in the Native community, the Indigenous community, has gotten worse. They will even say, the Indigenous community will even say that their biggest supporters in Congress have been Republicans, but yet they continue to vote Democrat.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that is this, it's like, the whole model is broken. The whole model makes everybody worse off. And
Doesn't make the technocrats and the ruling class and the Illuminati bankers worse off. They're doing great. And they're not pumping money in just to waste money. They're pumping money in to fund all sorts of subversive programs under the guise of aid, under the guise of philanthropy. Goithrapi, yeah. Under the guise of we're going to help the blacks, we're going to help the natives, we're going to help the Latinos, we're going to help the gays, we're going to help the trans, but actually they're funding all sorts of quiet little things that will come into play later. And we're watching them get activated right now. So, shout out to Nicole for dropping
Shout
that.
out to Nicole and
That is a dangerous thing to talk
for
about.
reiterating everything that she
And,
was saying. Thank you.
That's legit.
Joining us now is Michael Schellenberger.
Seen that one. Have you guys ever seen this?
Were the ETs that Moses in the Bible and other persons from the Bible interacted with? And what was the light on Mount Sinai and the burning bush?
Some of the extraterrestrials that Moses interacted with were the idea of the Anunnaki attempting to correct what the original group of Anunnaki caused by the creation of Homo sapiens on your planet, and attempted to guide and preserve certain genetic lines that would allow for the eventual evolution of the Earth into the sixth hybrid race. Some were not Anunnaki. We have been asked this question before, and we are not allowed to discuss that race. The idea of the light is simply the light from a craft, the energy from a craft landing on the mountain that interacted with Moses. The idea of the burning bush, again, a holographic projection of energy that was interpreted as fire. Similar in many ways to what people on your planet have been experiencing today as orbs of energy, orbs of light. So interpreted in an old-fashioned way, because that was all that was understood. Energy at the time was not understood in the way you understand it now scientifically. Therefore, it was perceived as a fire, when all it was basically an orb of glowing energy to represent a communication modality, a probe that would allow for communication to occur between the extraterrestrials and the individual experiencing the idea of the burning of the orb. It used the idea of a bush kind of similarly to the idea of anchoring it to a spot, like
Not
an
gonna lie,
antenna.
this is kind of interesting.
So you've mentioned before that if we were to time travel back in time, because our frequency is much higher now, that we would glow if we encountered the historical beings.
You would appear to them to glow, yes.
Yeah. So did Jesus appear to glow also?
From time to time, yes. This is what is usually referred to as the transfiguration in your religious doctrines. The idea that he was perceived as being surrounded by a glowing aura.
And this person is saying, I'm left with the distinct impression that virtually all angels described as light beings that came from the sky and the stars in most religious doctrines are actually highly advanced aliens from other civilizations that have visited Earth. Is that
Not
correct?
all, but most. Extra dimensionals, extraterrestrials, beings of higher frequency, but sometimes spirit beings as well that can manifest themselves to appear as if they are physical when they may not be. So it's a variety of things, yes.
Okay. And this person's asking about ancient Greece. I'm currently being taught in universities that Hera was oppressed in relation to Zeus, and that women were not respected in ancient Greece or any other parts of the world. My intuition tells me that's wrong, especially since there were like temples to Hera and things like that. So did the ancient Greeks truly view Hera as a goddess?
Yes. The idea again represents the struggle that humanity has gone through with regard to the idea of the balancing of the male and female energies. Now, yes, you are correct. This is not true at the time for the entire planet. Different portions of the planet, different cultures on your planet have gone through things in different ways at different times with respect to the balancing of the male and female energy. But definitely there have always been portions that did respect the balance and express the balance, or at the very least did respect the feminine energy. And as you say, as you point out, erected temples to demonstrate that fact. So it's not really just as simple as everyone doing the same thing on your planet at the same time.
Okay. I don't know. Don't know what to put on.
One of the great pleasures, as you might imagine, of holding.
There.
Hey, bad.
Well, let's look at shorts again. Okay. I've seen this video is like over a year old.
That's a tortoise. That's a turtle. That's a tortoise. That's a fucking turtle. I just made it.
Only in Louisiana. Well, I think we're done here. Boo, boo, boo. I don't know what to do.